It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. Also, go check us out on YouTube if you're not watching the shows all over there already. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss a video or when we go live for Steelers Saturday Sit Down. This is a Steelers show, so we will mention just right away, we're not doing a Steelers Saturday Sit Down this week. We've had some things come up. Smitty's a little busy Saturday morning. We understand the Steelers are playing Saturday afternoon, and so we still technically could have done it, but we also have lives outside of this that kind of sometimes that kind of precede some of this stuff. So no Steelers Saturday Sit Down this week. So we are going to be reviewing the Ravens this week, as well as talking about what happened with the Steelers in Philly. But in the future, if you want to watch on Steelers Saturday Sit Down, hit the notification bell so you know when we go live. Also, check out the description of the show. We've got all of our awesome sponsors in there. We got Game Changers. We've got Everything Custom Designs, our DC4L Custom Around the 412 shorts. We've got Boots' Electric Company, which I know saying Boots, you probably have no idea who that is. But it's our friend Boots. That what's the full name of it? It's
just Marcello Electric.
Marcello Electric. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so check that out. But no Rocking Around the 412 this week. That is officially over. So we're going to be stopping pushing that until July 1st of next year. But again, a big thank you to everybody that donated to the Rocking Around the 412 this year. Now we've gotten to the point where it's getting all of the gifts out to everybody that were part of the individual families. The East Rochester Salvation Army is already taken care of as far as the gifts going to them go. We mentioned that last week. But a big thank you to everybody that got involved. And then in the future, we'll probably maybe the week after Christmas or so, we will be doing a live show or live. Should we do it a live show with the gifts that were or the prizes that we're doing?
I think we did. I think we did it live in the past. I'm pretty sure we did it as a live show in the past. Yeah, I mean, I would say plan on it being that way, but if it's not for whatever reason, we'll let you guys know in advance. So
yeah, so anybody that donated at least $10 to the mission is eligible to win all the prizes that we had involved with this. That includes Around the 412 memorabilia, Game Changer shirts, Pat Fryermuth signed jersey, Jared Jones signed jersey, James Daniels game use visor, a training camp poster board of 21.
Yeah, it's a 16
Steelers
by 20
officials, like Steelers organization, the personnel. Yeah, I don't know what you exactly call it. It's not just players on there. So a lot of good stuff. Penguins tickets. I don't know. Normally that is like the marquee item. It didn't look like it was going to be, but it's turning into a better item than I thought it was going to be. So look out for that. Also hit the notification bell for that so you know when we are doing that. But again, just big thank you to everybody that got involved this year. The biggest year for us is in terms of how many kids we're able to provide Christmas for this year.
Yeah, the first one after we wrap up always feels so weird, not mentioning it anymore. Obviously, we're mentioning as a recap on this one, but certainly that wouldn't happen next week or anything like that. So this is the last one where you'll hear much about this for about 7 months. So yeah, let's just real quick mention 66 kids were impacted this year from Rocking Around the 412. That's 54 tags from the Salvation Army, 8 kids via 3 local families here, and then 2 separate GoFundMe campaigns, as you've heard us talk about. The one specifically going back to last week with Owen, a friend of the family of Tyler's. So 177 kids since 2019 have had their Christmas impacted by this mission that we do every year, which is crazy to think about. The first year doing so, that didn't count that into this, but I mean, still very happy with what we were able to do and very thankful for the people that donated and helpful for that cause and everything like that. But that was going to a 24/7 pediatric center in Aliquippa. No clue how many kids were at that facility or anything like that. So I don't know how to bring in that number. I just know we raised about $1,500 that year. And then since 2019, where I've been able to keep track of the exact number of kids, it's been 177, which is crazy to think about. So thank you to everybody that's been a part of this thing over the last 7 years now of doing so. And yeah, like Tyler said, we'll be in touch about when we're going to do that live show. And hopefully some of you guys are going to walk away with some great prizes. So look forward to doing that. I was looking forward to, a little bit of a litmus test for the Steelers this past Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles. I will say I'm not like overly surprised. I'm definitely not surprised with the result that they lost by. I actually think the score probably looked a little bit better than it was. I mean, this was
I think so too.
From the Eagles. I know Najee wasn't credited with a fumble. It actually goes to Ross because Najee never possessed it, but it was really on Najee Harris, that fumble. I mean, if that doesn't happen, they're driving to potentially tie the football game at that point, and it certainly never felt like it should have been that close. Ends up being a 10-point win, which is a 14-point win, which is what we thought was going to happen about anyway. I was at 26-16. You were somewhere within that ballpark as well, right? Like
24-14.
So yeah, we were kind of in the same range there, but I certainly didn't feel like it was that close of a game. I mean, 2 possessions for the Steelers in the second half, about 5 minutes and 50 seconds total time of possession in the second half. This was just a masterclass from Philly. And what I really think was highlighted here is just the discrepancy of talent, like top to bottom. I think the Steelers are a good football team, but I think right now the Eagles are the class of the NFL. I think they've overtaken Detroit in the NFC primarily because of what they do on the defensive side as well. I know a lot of that's due to injuries, but I just don't think Detroit can do what Philadelphia can do defensively now. And I'll be honest, I think I have Philadelphia a little bit above Buffalo right now as well. If I'm picking a Super Bowl, it's probably those 2 teams. Philadelphia, slight edge. I think when they're going the way that they were going on Sunday, they're the hardest team to beat in the NFL. And Jalen Hurts, just 1 week removed from potentially his worst game. If he plays like that, they're nearly impossible to beat with what they have on both sides of the ball. So I'll be honest. I was also, and Alan wrote a piece about this, by the way. Alan Saunders, my co-host of the other podcast I do, which I feel like we always bring up on here. But specifically the reason I'm bringing it up on here, he wrote an article this past week over at Steelers Now, and it's one of my favorite articles, not just by him, but by anybody that I've read, because we talk about trying to who should the Steelers be emulating as they kind of go through this retooling process to become a contender? And I think it's the Eagles, and I think that they're trying to do that. So it was almost like a peek into the future, this game on Sunday, in terms of what the Steelers could potentially be if they keep building this thing the right way.
That's a nice thing to think about, because I feel like after watching that game, they're further away than I would like them to. And I feel like we need to mention that you were missing one of, if not your best tackler on defense in DeShon Elliott. You were missing George Pickens offensively, which takes away a vast majority of your offensive production, quite frankly. So we have to put an asterisk a little bit on that. But I feel like even with those guys, I don't know how much of a difference it would have made in totality for this game. I never really thought the Steelers were even in this game. Even at halftime when it was 17-13, to me, it didn't feel like the Steelers really had a grasp on this game. And then when it got to the second half, you mentioned the Steelers only saw the ball twice. I mentioned that on Steelers Saturday sit down, that was one of the things that I was worried about, is if you get the Eagles going offensively, it's going to shorten the game for you, especially when they're running the football efficiently. That shortens the game for your offense in a game where you're trying to play keep up. And it just is a tough battle to go about in that second half when you only see the ball twice and you fumble and you punt and you don't capitalize on either of those opportunities. You don't see the ball again. And that last drive, there was 10 and a half minutes left in the game. You don't see the ball. I just calculated it up while you were talking. In the second half of the 30 minutes in the second half, the Eagles had the ball for over 24 minutes. And so the Steelers just never really had a chance to even get back in this game. And I don't know about you, but for the entirety of the game, for the most part, once the Eagles got rolling a little bit in the second quarter, even though it was only a 4-point game at halftime, I never really felt like the Steelers were going to come back or were going to win. And maybe it was until the fumble that really solidified it for me, but just the entire vibe around this game to me was that the Eagles were more or less outclassing the Steelers, and I just didn't think that the Steelers had it in them to win this game, despite what the score was telling me.
Well, what's funny is like I felt like to make up for the talent discrepancy, the Steelers were going to have some things go their way. They're going to have to create some turnovers, and they do. Like they did the TJ strip punch out on Jalen Hurts, which he's the best in the world in terms of punching the ball out like that. Awesome to see that. And then Mark Robinson absolutely decleating Cooper DeJean on a punt return and taking the ball away again. But they turned both those possessions into a total of 3 points. So they started the game the way they needed to in terms of getting the takeaways. The offense didn't do what they needed to in order to play from ahead, which is a big thing that we talked about. If they weren't going to be ahead in this game, we thought the path wasn't going to be there for them to win this football game, and it wasn't. Again, at one point, they were driving to potentially tie this one, but the fact that they weren't capitalizing on the couple turnovers they had early kind of told me where this game was going to go. And it always feels like in a Steelers loss, just something goofy that doesn't happen ever is going to happen. And I think the fumble on that toss play was, the encapsulate, like that was this game's one play that doesn't happen ever, that happened in this one that led to a loss. It seems like there's one of those anytime the Steelers do lose.
And not to mention the toss play, the pitch play, that has been I guess a thorn in the side of a lot of Steeler fans so far this year. And I don't even think the toss play has been bad all season long.
I mean, if you look at the numbers,
I think it's been grossly over exaggerated by Steeler fans, and I think that play works more often than not. I just don't think a lot of people like the actual semantics of that play itself. And so when you have something like that, then it just gives people an excuse to say, like, never go back to it. It's a terrible decision. When in reality, if you look at the majority of the year, I think the toss has been fine.
It's the new jet sweep. Like, they average like 6 yards per play on the jet sweep, but people hated it when we were running it. It was their most effective play. Now, and I'm not saying it's their most effective play now. It's the most effective play for Najee. He has more yards per carry on toss plays than any other run that they have. For Jalen and Cordero, I guess you could say maybe they shouldn't be running toss plays, but they have, like, it's got to be in the playbook for Najee. He's more efficient on it than on other runs. But the to me as a whole, this encapsulates their woes in the run game, because if you're averaging like 3 point some yards per carry on this play, but it's one of your most successful running plays, what does that tell you about everything else that you're doing? Like, I just don't think that they've been good enough across the board. We talked about last week, they go into the game as a top 10 team in terms of their rushing yards per game. That's just a volume stat. Like, from an efficiency standpoint, they have not been that good running the football. And I think that continued to be the case, and I expected it to be a case against this Philadelphia defense in particular. But I don't think it was necessarily a case of, play calling or anything like that. Again, I just think there's that much of a talent discrepancy, and I think a lot of the times when you go back and watch on tape and it looks like offensive linemen are missing assignments or just not on the same page, I think that it really gets highlighted more and looks that way because of what they're going up against on the other side. I really just believe this was just Philadelphia putting belt to ass on Sunday.
Quite literally. And just speaking of the offense, since we're talking about that right now, I just think it was a very inefficient day overall for the offense, not just in the run.
I feel like they didn't have the ball,
but like, yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. Like, it shortens your game when you don't have the ball, and whenever you're inefficient, when in your moments that you do have the ball, like you mentioned, they got 3 points off of 2 turnovers. That is something that you cannot do
in Philadelphia territory. Like, they started in plus
both
territory,
in Philadelphia territory. Yeah, I just think it was a really rough day. I mean, Russ 14 of 22, which like isn't awful, but only 128 yards, the 1 touchdown to Pat Freiermuth. They averaged 3.3 yards of rushing on the ground, 17 carries, 56 yards as a team. And then passing wise, actually, coincidentally enough, one of my bold predictions on Steelers Saturday Sit Down came true, and it was Calvin Austin having 5+ catches in this game, and he led the team in receptions with 5 catches for 65 yards in this game. So I mean, it was better than 1 catch for 4 yards in the game prior. Pat had the 1 touchdown, but then after those 2, they were the only ones with multi-catches.
I thought those were their 2 best players on offense.
Seriously, for real. I mean, you had Ben Skoranek get 1 catch, Mike Williams 1, Najee, Jalen. Scotty Miller had nothing. He just had 1 target. Van Jefferson and Cordell Patterson all had 1 reception. I really think that it was very evident in this game, if you're not being able to run the football, how much of a game changer George Pickens is in the passing game.
What's going on, everybody? Smitty from around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. Very nicely done. Yeah, I think that what those receiving numbers tell me is what we already knew going into it. I mean, if you go back and watch this, really no separation. I mean, I thought Calvin played pretty well and had his moments for sure. I thought Pat played pretty well. Could have had one more catch that was like kind of in the open field version of the Jesse James play. Basically, took a catch off the board for Pat. That, I mean, it's by role, by definition, not a catch, but I still. Man, I don't get it. But anyway, the touchdown was beautiful, though. I mean, plucking that ball away, just super strong hands, pulling it away from, I think it was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson that he pulled it away from in the end zone. The one drive that the Steelers were able to put together. But yeah, outside of those two guys, I think it was once again just a clear showing of what isn't there in the receiver room and a team not having any respect, honestly, for the receiving options that the Steelers have, sans George Pickens. Like, I think it was very clear they were completely comfortable one-upping them, just going straight up man on man and nobody getting separation.
Yeah, and you think about if George Pickens is playing in this game, not necessarily what his numbers are going to be, but what does it look like for everybody else? We talk about how just having him on the field opens things up for your other players on your receivers. I mean, think about how much involvement, since Russ has taken over, of like a guy like Van Jefferson, what he's had in this offense. It's very clear that if you don't have a guy like George Pickens on the field, someone like Van Jefferson, despite having Russell Wilson at quarterback still, is not going to be able to have the same amount of impact as he would if George Pickens is not on the field. So I think
Calvin had 5 catches, and I'm sitting there thinking like, dude, he could have been 8, 9. Like, he could have had probably his most volume as a pro if George was on the field opposite.
Yeah, that's why I think that as long as the Steelers do not have George Pickens, I think that it is arguably more of a difference what he does for the other receivers around him and how they are affected by the defense as opposed to what he does just stats-wise. Obviously, he's the number one guy. He gets the most volume, and he's an absolute freak. So he has his own right to be able to have that kind of impact just by himself. But I just think that he changes everything the defense has to game plan around, and it affects the other receivers in a positive way for the Steelers when he's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why you feel like, I mean, I don't want him to push the issue and play through injury or anything like that. But like, as soon as he can get back and be at close full strength as possible, it's going to be a welcome sight. Potentially as early as this Saturday, we can start diving into that now and move on from this. Taking a look first at what the injury report looks like. We see TJ Watt go down in this game against Philadelphia, though, and low ankle sprain. Back in a limited capacity at practice today. I'll be honest, from everything that I've heard, I think he's going to go. I really don't have a ton of question about that. Now, how effective is he going to be? Is he going to be on a pitch count? Potentially, but I believe he suits up on Saturday. I would say a little bit more question for me in terms of George, but he's already ahead of where I had heard. I don't know if I brought this up last week, but like, there was a lot of chatter that they were going to shut it down for the rest of the regular season and just hope that he's back for the playoffs with this injury. But I'd say with him working the last 2 days, I know that it's listed as DNP, but I mean, if you follow people that cover the team, yeah, he's doing stuff. Like, he's working in some capacity.
He's doing more than I thought someone with a hamstring injury would if they were really nursing that injury.
So I think potentially we could see tomorrow is going to be a big day. We'll see what his participation is at practice on Thursday. I say tomorrow, but it's really today by the time you guys are watching and listening to this. So monitor that for sure. I would say DeShon Elliott, I wouldn't expect to see again.
Yeah.
Just with what I've seen and what I've heard. I think Larry Ogunjobi will be back from his groin injury. So I really think you're talking about George is the one to watch for me that could go either way. I think TJ plays. I think DeShon Elliott doesn't. George is a question mark.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I'm very encouraged by what I've seen from George. Like I said, like, he's not doing a ton. he's not going full go, but the fact that he's doing like little ladder drills and stuff like that.
That's what I was saying.
Like
The ladders was going to bring up. I don't know that you're having him go through that. Like,
if his hamstring is really injuring him still, like if it's really bothering him still, I don't think you're doing that type of stuff. Also, I mean, maybe it is bothering him. I've seen better ladder work from high school kids. Come on, George. What are we doing? I'm just saying. But I think it is encouraging to see, to say the least. And we talked about on Steelers Saturday Sit Down how between the two, if we were choosing when George could come back, we'd ultimately want him to come back for this Ravens game as opposed to pushing it for the Eagles game. So if he's able to come back for this Ravens game, that would be a huge boost to the offense. But at the same time, I don't want him to push it because I would hate for him to come back earlier than he needs to and re-aggravate the injury worse than what it already was. And so now we're not even just talking about him potentially missing the rest of the regular season. What if he's missing the first round of the playoffs at that point? That's something that I don't want to, or the rest of the year in general. I don't want to get into those waters. So if it's like a 50-50 go, and I know it never is for like team doctors and everything, it's not 50-50, but if it is really that much of a decision whether they should let him play or not, I would be on the side of not letting him play in this game. I know winning the division is practically in hand if you win this game, but I just think for the greater good of the team and looking ahead, I would rather him just get healthy. And so I know that some people may disagree with that. You want him back so they can potentially win the division on Saturday, but I just think that he's too valuable to your offense. And if Sunday was any indication, you are not going to be able to compete in the playoffs if you do not have a healthy George Pickens.
It's so hard to say because of the type of injury it is. Like you're talking about the re-injury risk, like that could happen with a lot of injury, but like hamstring specifically, like the re-aggravation is much more likely than a lot of other injuries. So if you felt like Saturday we might be pushing it, but would feel pretty good about his ability to go on Christmas against the Chiefs, then I would lean towards be with you because while they could lock up the division Saturday, even if the Ravens win, as long as the Steelers, if they were to win the next two, they would still win the division over Baltimore. So those two would still be, more important down the road. So it's such a tough call. I mean, I did it, but I think we know the Steelers, they're going to lean on the side of caution here. If they feel like he isn't, he's not going to. That's why I feel like it is
like you just mentioned, it's one of those injuries where it's not just dealing with pain. Like with TJ's, it's a little different because you tape it up pretty well, and then it's just kind of how much pain can you tolerate. But with a hamstring, it's more so just even if the pain doesn't feel that bad, if it gets tweaked slightly on Saturday, it could turn much worse. And so that's why I think that it's something that you need to monitor way more than someone like TJ. Now, TJ, I agree with you. I think TJ is going to go. I think the fact that he was a limited participant in practice today shows me that I think that the Steelers are going to play him on Saturday. And I like you mentioned, I don't know exactly what kind of role as far as like a pitch count, like how much he's actually going to have an impact on the game. And I mean, a healthy Herbig definitely helps kind of make that decision.
Dude, if they played TJ like just on third, like an obvious pass rush situations, I'd be completely fine with that.
Yeah, I think that the fact that Herbig is back and fully healthy really helps this decision. If you didn't have him back, this would be a lot tougher decision for the Steelers, I feel like. But I think he's going to play. It stinks that DeShon Elliott doesn't look like he's going to be back. Donte Jackson probably not going to be playing in this one. Seems like the injury history is following him to Pittsburgh, which is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah.
And then Larry Ogunjobi. I mean, I don't know necessarily know if he's gonna play. Like, is he gonna be back soon or not? I don't know.
I think he's gonna go. I mean, limited. Okay. I would think. And he's a guy on it. He's in the past. He's not even practiced and then played on a Sunday. Like that when he was dealing with the foot thing, obviously, like his first couple years here, that was the case sometimes. So, the fact he's been limited 2 days in a row, I think he's back on Saturday. But I agree about everything else that you just. I don't think DeShon. I don't think Donte, who I didn't even bring up, but yeah, Donte Jackson's been hurt seemingly in every game this year, but he ends up playing the following day. Like he'll leave games early, but then play on Sunday. I think this is the first one where Allen hasn't even seen him, but he hasn't even been around the last couple of days. So that back issue, he has a pinched nerve in his lower back. So
I know what that's like. Not fun. And I'm not an athlete.
I think you see.
I can only imagine.
Honestly, I think this is a discussion too, and we can kind of get into this Ravens thing now as we discuss this. So if you're not going to have Donte Jackson, you got Corey Trice probably getting a helmet in this one. James Pierre is the one that stepped in when Donte Jackson went down. I understand, James Pierre was the guy with the helmet last week, and he had the helmet for special teams, and obviously he's been a contributor in that capacity. And I also think, like, in a pinch, it makes more sense to play him. But now that you have, like, this week to prepare, knowing that you're not going to have Donte Jackson, to me, I'd be giving Corey Trice those reps. I think you have to find out what you have in him going forward, especially because Donte Jackson is a looming free agent. Where's your mind at with that? Because I think I'm starting Corey Trice opposite of Joey Porter Jr. on Sunday.
I would start him. James Pierre, I know he had the pick a couple weeks ago defensively, but I just don't know that I necessarily trust him enough as a full-time defender if he has to be the corner opposite of Joey Porter Jr. at this point. And Corey Trice, not that necessarily I trust him more, but kind of like what you're mentioning, you kind of have to figure out what you have with him. And you didn't have a rookie year from him. This is his pseudo rookie year because he missed all of last season with an injury. And he plays well in, what was it, the Jets game? Or was it even before that, Chargers game? I'm trying to think of how early he got injured. Corey Trice this season.
Oh, he had a pick against Denver, and I don't know if he got hurt that same game. So it would have been the Chargers if it wasn't in Denver.
Okay.
He got hurt, and then he missed
I just know
weeks.
It was super early, but I thought that what you saw on the field from him, and even if you want to go back into the preseason too, which I know that's here and gone, like we're literally in like week 15 or whatever, but it looked very promising what you were seeing from him on the field. And I would like to see more of that. Hopefully the injury bug does not follow him this week, but I agree. I would give him the helmet. I would give him the start. And I think that you finally have to see what you have in him for a future at cornerback. I mean, maybe the decision with what you do with Corey Trice and what you do if you want to extend Donte Jackson, that gets affected by how well Corey Trice can play if Donte Jackson is going to be out. I mean, the best availability is availability, or whatever Tomlin says.
The best ability
is availability. I don't know. I know Tomlin said something.
Yeah, you were
like
there.
That.
Yeah, you were in the
but neither guy has shown a ton of availability. I mean, Donte Jackson for the majority of the season has been around, but he still has nagging injuries, it seems like, even though he has been playing. Corey Trice hasn't played barely any in his entire career. I think it makes sense to give him the start.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see if that happens. But definitely both are going to have helmets, regardless if Donte Jackson doesn't go. So we'll see about that. So, all right, let's dive more into this Ravens game then. Steelers have won 8 out of the last 9 against the Baltimore Ravens. But interestingly enough, this will be the first time that Lamar Jackson starts against the Steelers in Baltimore with a crowd. The only other time that the Steelers have gone to Baltimore and Lamar Jackson played was in 2020 during the COVID year. So obviously not a full capacity stadium then. Don't know if that's going to play into anything here. Obviously, the Steelers have largely dominated this rivalry as of late. The only loss within that 9 was when Mitchell Trubisky in 2022 threw 2 interceptions in plus territory. The Steelers lose that game 16-14. Still just a 2-point loss despite that. Going over some numbers here, and we just played this team recently, so don't know how much things have changed, but still might as well do this. The Ravens, their offense, I know that if you're a Steelers fan, you probably don't view it the same way as pretty much everybody else around the league, but they are very good. First in yards, 434 per game, 245.6 passing yards per game, which is third, 178 rushing yards per game, which is second, third in scoring offense at 29.9%, and their third down percentage is second in the NFL at 48.7, going against the Steelers defense that is seventh in yards allowed per game at 333.4, 22nd in passing yards allowed at 222, 94 yards per game rushing, which is fourth in the NFL, 18.9 points per game, which is sixth, and 35.1 third down percentage, which is seventh in the NFL. Obviously, took some hits there against Philadelphia, but still largely very good there. The one thing that really didn't take a hit was the rushing yards per game, despite going against Saquon. I think that as far as that element of that game went, they were able to deploy their game plan. It's just Jalen Hurts was able to do what potentially we knew Jalen Hurts could do if their focus was on shutting down Saquon. But anyway, there we go. Let's start there. Ravens offense, Steelers defense. That's where I think the story of this game is really going to be told anyway. Are they going to once again be able to limit Lamar Jackson? No DeShon Elliott, no Donte Jackson in this one. Very much looking like getting Larry Ogunjobi back, I guess. We'll see about TJ Watt. Like I said, I feel pretty good about that one. Where's your mind at on this one? I think that we know the game plan that needs to be deployed. Are they going to be able to successfully do it again?
Well, something that I think about with this matchup with the Ravens is kind of like what we were talking about with the first matchup. So both of us kind of ignored the natural history that these two teams have against each other. We both predicted high-scoring games very ignorantly. And that was not the case. The Steelers beat the Ravens in Pittsburgh 18-16. It was a very classic AFC North Steelers Ravens matchup. And so that leads me to believe that you're probably in store for a similar game, despite all of the offensive stats that you just mentioned with the Ravens, despite what Lamar was able to do, albeit it was against the New York Giants last week, but still all being able to throw for 5 touchdowns, the yards that he had, they looked very good offensively. They are very good offensively. But there's something about this matchup that I ignored last time, and really not even just ignored. You and I and probably several others that predicted a high-scoring game weren't even thinking about, oh, this is Steelers-Ravens. This is going to be a gritty, low-scoring tough match game. We were just looking at the teams outside of the matchup themselves and looking what they can do on the field. Now I can't ignore the matchup. Now that's all I think about when I think about this matchup. I don't really care about the stats that the Ravens offense is putting up. I don't care that the Steelers are 22nd in passing yards against per game. Now I just am focused on how much of a battle this is going to be defensively. Like you mentioned, this is Lamar's first matchup in Baltimore with an actual crowd, and it seems like, I don't understand why, anytime the Steelers go to Baltimore, the weather's going to be crap, and it looks like it's going to be the case again on Saturday. I just don't envision this being another high-scoring game, especially if the weather has involvement in this game. I think the Steelers play Baltimore well, and I feel like a streak like 8 out of the last 9 is something that is worth noting. It's not a fluke. And is it the Steelers being that much better than the Ravens? I don't necessarily think so. I'm sure the Ravens were probably better teams in some of those matchups that where the Steelers ended up winning the game over these last several seasons. But I just can't help but think that the Steelers have an edge over the Ravens, whether that is mentally when these guys touch the field, whether that is coaching and Tomlin has an edge over John Harbaugh. There's just something about this matchup, and I'm not giving a prediction that Steelers are going to win yet, but there's just something about this matchup that makes me think it is going to be a close game, and that the Ravens specifically, just because of the numbers that they have been putting up outside of the Steelers matchup, the Ravens specifically are not going to perform how, I mean, I don't know what the line is in this game, but probably how Vegas feels like they're going to, or how fans around the NFL think that Baltimore is going in this matchup, despite potentially not having TJ, even though we both said that we think that he's going to play, but despite possibly not having George Pickens, DeShon Elliott, Donte Jackson, despite all of that, I just really can't wrap my head around thinking about this matchup itself over the past 5 seasons that it's going to be a blowout in the Ravens' favor.
-6.5 point favorites are the Ravens on Saturday, which at least as of right now, there are only 4 games if you include Monday night, 4 games with a larger spread. So Steelers 5th biggest underdog this week, at least as it stands right now against the Ravens. And I mean, I guess if you're taking into account the injuries, obviously, and not knowing health there, I guess I can kind of get it. Also, obviously, 3 points to the home team there as well. So really neutral site, they'd be looking at as a 3.5 point favorite for Baltimore there. but to your point, man, like it's not like one of those things where like the Steelers not winning in Philly or like something completely random like that. These teams see each other twice a year. Like there is actually substance to that stat, in my opinion, in terms of the Steelers' success against them and Tomlin's success against them. So I don't know. I'm not making my prediction yet either, obviously, but they obviously, at the very least, what we can say without giving a prediction here is they've defended this team better than anybody else. It doesn't matter if it was Keith Butler to Terrell Austin, ultimately Tomlin at the helm of what's going on there defensively. It doesn't matter who's been on the offensive side for the Ravens, whether it's been Greg Roman running the show or now Todd Monken, who I think is a very good offensive coordinator. Like there's been some moving pieces on both sides, and it hasn't mattered. The Steelers again have largely dominated. Even before winning 8 out of 9, they had won like 5 out of the previous 7 or something like that. So like they've gotten the better of Baltimore a lot as of late. So we'll see there. Again, it all is going to come down to Lamar Jackson and what he does. Big news, no Rashad Bateman potentially popping up on the injury report with a foot issue. I think that's bigger news than, what we would have maybe talked about in the past, just as I feel like he's really started to come on the last few weeks. And for whatever reason, Zay Flowers just goes like, I don't know, brain dead like 5 times every time that he plays the Steelers and has the ball smacked off his visor. And just like, for whatever reason, he has not played well against the Steelers. So I think they certainly need a guy like Rashad Bateman. We know Deontay Johnson's not going to go in this one. We know the passing game typically funneled through the tight ends anyway, but no Rashad Bateman would be pretty massive for that passing game. But it's all about Lamar Jackson when it comes to that anyways. So we'll see in terms of their ability to slow that down. Steelers offense going against Ravens defense here. Total yards, 343.6 yards per game for the Steelers offense. That's 18th in the NFL. 24th in passing yards per game at 198.9, 126.6 rushing yards per game, which is 10th. 24 points per game, which is 10th. And a 38.9 third down percentage, which is 13th, 38.9, 13th in the NFL. Going against the Ravens defense, 20th in yards per game, 357.7, 31st in passing yards allowed per game, 258.9, first in rushing yards allowed per game at 80.7, 23.7 points per game, which is 22nd, and a 41.3% third down percentage, which is 23rd in the NFL. So we talked about this the first matchup, though. Like the Ravens defense came into it not being very good, and we had kind of seen signs of life from the Steelers offense and vice versa. We expected Baltimore to be able to put up points. We get to that matchup, it doesn't happen. Like it's just a classic AFC North, Steelers, Ravens. So to your point, like you said earlier, it's almost like throw these numbers out when these two teams play each other. Like none of the stats I just read off matter. It's Steelers, it's Ravens. It's probably going to go how it's gone now for decades.
Yeah, and that kind of changes what I was about to say, because I felt like even though the Ravens are first overall with 80 rushing yards against per game, also in the first matchup, the Steelers ran for 122 yards. So that's something. I was about to say that I feel like playing the Ravens defense is going to feel like a breath of fresh air for the Steelers after having to play the Philadelphia defense in Philly. And maybe I shouldn't say that because of what we were just saying, how this matchup, you can literally throw all the numbers out the window. It doesn't really matter. It's going to be a tough-nosed battle as it is. But I still feel like, despite not necessarily statistically, if you even just look at like personnel-wise, I feel like the Steelers offense is going to have a better time going against this Ravens defense than they did against Philadelphia. I'm not necessarily saying that they're magically going to go back to scoring 30 plus a game. That would go against everything that we said as far as like the matchup goes. But I do think that the Steelers are going to find themselves moving the ball a little easier than you were in Philadelphia. I do think the Steelers are going to have more opportunities to get the ball, for a matter of fact, in this one. And I think that even without George, if you were to say, like, out of these two matchups, the one we just had against Philadelphia or against Baltimore, who do you think that the Steelers could have a better advantage of without George Pickens? And I would still say Baltimore, even though it is a divisional matchup, even though you're in Baltimore. I just think that that is the case. And I think that the secondary in Baltimore allows for your guys that you currently have that played in that Philadelphia game without George Pickens to get more open. But they're still going to have to go out there and do it. And like we mentioned, this matchup is going to be tough. I still think it's going to be tough for the Steelers offense in this one, playing on the road in that divisional game against Baltimore. But I do think that it is going to be, at least on paper, an easier time than what they had in Philadelphia. Even if you just don't look at the numbers, just simply looking at the depth chart, looking at the personnel across from them, I think it's going to be better for the Steelers offense.
100%. I agree with that. Fully. We'll get it when we do our predictions. I have a bold prediction that kind of would lean into that as well. So yeah, we'll see. But I agree. I think that there's a better chance of the offense being able to create some splash plays against it. I think Philly's defense is as good as it gets in the league. Like, I mean, I'm not sure that people give them that respect because you think about the offense, I think, with them first and foremost, with all the playmakers they have. But yeah, their defense is.
Well, that's like you mentioned. Baltimore's number 1 in rushing yards against. Isn't Philly number 2?
Yeah,
and then Philly is also way above them in every other category.
Exactly. Well. I mean, Baltimore is good from an efficiency standpoint too, but there was I just wonder too, are they number 1 against the run because you can beat you don't even have to run against them. I don't know how many rushing attempts per game teams are even having against them, I guess is what I'm saying. But anyways, yeah, we'll see about that. Anything else before we get into our predictions and stuff?
Just a little note. You mentioned that it is 6.5, the line for Baltimore right now. I went back and looked over this 9-game streak that the Steelers are on, winning 8 out of their last 9. That line by either team would have only been covered twice. And it was the matchup in October of 2023 and the last matchup last year, January of 2024, I guess technically earlier this year, so to speak. The Steelers won both of those matchups 17-10, would have covered the 6.5 points. Every other matchup in this 8 out of the last 9 stretch would have been less than 6.5 points.
Okay. Good stuff. I also realized something. One of my bold predictions last week was a special teams touchdown. Mark Robinson forced that fumble on this. If that ball was went a different direction, they could have scooped it
and scored. Yeah,
we could have had it. But anyways, we'll get into our predictions for this one right after a word from our sponsor at Keats Barbershop. Smitty from around the 412 here, and while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keat at Keats Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keats Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app The Cut, book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keats Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. Debating going back to just a mustache for the month of January. I heard that's apparently a thing. I've always just known Movember to be a thing, but apparently Manuary is a thing as well. So maybe. But anyway, let's get into some predictions, both bold predictions and store predictions for this one. I mentioned I had a bold prediction that kind of coincided with your idea that the Steelers passing attack could potentially still have some success in this one, with obviously with George Pickens, but potentially even without, at least more than they were able to against Philly. My bold prediction: Calvin Austin, first 100-yard receiving game in the NFL comes on Saturday against the Baltimore Ravens.
Wow.
Career high right now, 95 yards against the Chargers in week 3.
I'm not going to hold you to this, but out of those 100 yards, how many receptions do you think?
6.
Okay. So he eclipsed this last week where he had 5.
Which actually, that might be his most receptions in a game as well, if he gets 6.
It could be.
No, sorry. He had 6 receptions in the opener last year, but only 37 yards on those 6 receptions. Yeah, and then this year his highest is 5. Also was last week. So 5 receptions, 65 yards. Last week he had 4 for 95, which is his career high so far. But I think he goes over 100 on 6 receptions Saturday.
I like it. So I think offensively, you're going to see a bounce back, make up necessarily kind of sort of game from Najee Harris. I'm sure he is feeling awful. If you looked at him on the sideline after that not fumble technically, but still a fumble by Najee Harris, he looked distraught. He looked very disappointed. He's turned into one of these leaders on the offense. And I feel like we're going to see a bounce back game despite having the best rush defense in Baltimore. I think that you're going to see an efficient day from him, and he's going to find the end zone twice. And I think that did you give a defensive prediction? Because I was going to give one of those too.
Go ahead. Yeah, okay. I'm going to. I just figured we'd do offense first. So you do defense first.
So my offense is Najee Harris is going to find the end zone twice in this one. I think defensively, I know we've been saying it all season long. I know people have been wanting it. People have been begging for it. Minkah Fitzpatrick is finally going to get an interception. Finally. You mentioned splash plays. I know you're talking about the offense when that happens. We're going to get a splash play on the defense. Minkah is finally going to break his streak. That is at how many games now?
I actually don't know.
It's been so long. It's going back to last season where I don't even remember how many games it's been, but he's going to break it.
The thing is, like, the likelihood is actually, I would say, between against Philly last week and this week, is significantly even decreased because of him having to play more in the box without DeShon Elliott. So if it happens this week, like, that's going to be without DeShon Elliott, pretty crazy that it happens, because I'm just trying to think about how he's even going to be deployed, because he's playing a lot more in the box. So
yeah,
I mean, maybe it comes closer to the line of scrimmage. I don't know. I'm trying to actually
find be a batted ball.
Yeah, potentially. Maybe Cam gets his paw on one. And
speaking of,
you mention this a while ago. It's funny how we talk about defensive linemen and we say that they got their paw on it. Everybody else is just like their hands.
Get their hands up. But no, it's a paw. Yeah, no, Minkah.
His last interception, week 16, 2022, against the Baltimore Ravens.
How many games is that? 17 last year.
And the playoff game.
So 18.
And then the last one of 22.
Plus 14 this year. So that's 32. And then
the last one of
just
22.
one of 22.
Yeah.
Did we not make the playoffs in 22?
No. Nope.
No, we did not. So 33 games without an interception from Minkah Fitzpatrick. That is a mind-boggling number.
It is pretty crazy. Yeah.
$18 million a year for what? Just kidding. I'm not going to be one of those people. But
yeah, I mean, he's playing well.
He hasn't had an interception. Yeah. I mean, I get it, and I defend him, and I say, like, you're not going to get interceptions if you're not getting the ball thrown towards you. But man, that is nuts. It has been that long. Over 2 years worth of game, or almost 2 years worth of games without an interception. That's crazy. He's going to break it. He's going to get one.
Defensively, my bold prediction, and I don't even know if this is bold. So part of me is thinking, do I have to rethink this? Because my bold prediction was going to be Nick Herbig once again gets a ball out. He had 3 straight games against this division that started with the first Ravens matchup where he took the ball away, punching one out on Derrick Henry. Didn't get one the home game against Cleveland. Obviously, we had Alex Highsmith back in the fold, so he took a little bit of a step back. Kind of expecting, even if TJ goes, which I do think is going to happen, can't say that enough, we see more of Nick Herbig than we typically would with TJ and Alex both being active. And I think he gets another one on Saturday.
I like it. I like that one. Can I add a special teams one that actually is not Steelers?
Oh, okay. Oh, boy.
Justin Tucker is going to miss another kick. Justin Tucker is going to miss another kick. It's going to happen.
We said bold.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Okay, this one's not bold. Just another prediction for special teams, not Steelers. Justin Tucker is going to miss another kick. It's got to happen. It would be too good for it not to happen. Happened twice the last time they played. I'm only asking for it to happen once.
And it's not like he didn't have to kick a field goal against the Giants last week. So his previous game before that, even against Philly, he was 2 for 4 on field goal attempts, and he also missed an extra point. So yeah, he was 5 for 5 on his extra points.
Then maybe this isn't even a prediction; it's just a certainty that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has not. He's not been the same guy this year.
What a shame.
19 for 27 on field goals, 47 of 49 on extra points.
You just got to learn when to hang them up,
Yeah. Father Time gets everybody. All right, score predictions time. I guess I'll go first. It's weird because I normally say mine first on afternoon drive, and I'm like tuned up, just ready to go, knowing what I'm going with here. I have kept going back and forth as I've gone through this week thinking about it. And it's kind of tough because we don't know fully what's going on injury-wise with some of these guys. Steelers have won 8 out of 9. Lamar has not played the Steelers yet in Baltimore with a crowd, like an actual crowd happening for the first time this Saturday. Steelers know they win the division if they win this game. Baltimore also knows that. The only shot that they have of winning the division is by winning this game. And then also what happens afterwards. I am kind of throwing everything that my mind is telling me out the window on this one. Common sense, I'm throwing it out the window. All rationale, I'm throwing out the window.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going with what I've seen between these two teams as of late. I think they do it again. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win this football game. It might be ugly for a bit. I think the offense kind of finds their footing here in this one for a period of time as well. I'm going to go Steelers win this one 23-18 on Saturday.
I dig it. I like it. And I also
T-shirts and hats in the locker room afterwards.
I also like it because I'm also throwing everything out the window in this game. I mentioned that when I was talking about the offense and the defense, like it doesn't matter what statistics you throw at us for this game. It really is not going to matter until those teams get out on the field together. And 8 out of 9, that's something. Whether you like it or not, whether you're a Pittsburgh fan, Baltimore fan, that is something, and it's tangible, and it's hard to explain why that is the case, but it is something that the Steelers have going for them against this team. I really feel like the Steelers are going to get the job done on Saturday. I think they're going to win the division. They can feel it and have it in their grasp. And like you mentioned, they know that they can win it, but also if they lose this game, they know that they can lose this division easily as well, looking at what they have ahead. So you don't want to test that. You don't want to play with fate. I think the Steelers get it done on Saturday. I think they win by a score of 20-17, a more classic AFC North score, if you will. Actually, probably classic is even more lower than that. But I'm going to say a little bit more offense than a throwback AFC North game. 20-17, I think you win by a Chris Boswell field goal. I'm not going to say a walk-off, but I think you get one late in the game to take the lead. And it's going to be 5 in a row that the Steelers have beat the Ravens. And in the year of our Lord, 2024, that would be the 3rd time in a calendar year that the Steelers have beat the Ravens because they played them in January of this year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I forgot about that. We'll see. I wouldn't rule out a third matchup potentially happening down the line in the postseason as well. And that could be a lot of fun and also very stressful. But man, I want this division so bad. I want them to have a home playoff game so bad. It's been far too long. I've only been to one, and it wasn't recently.
And the last one was crap.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the most recent one, like nobody was there in 2020. And then even before that, the loss to the Jaguars, when there were fans there, I wasn't there for that. So it's been a while. It's been a while for a legit home playoff game. And I hope that these guys are thinking about that.
So when is the last home playoff game the Steelers won?
2016, the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Beat the Dolphins, beat the Chiefs
Dolphins,
in Kansas City.
Beat the Chiefs by 6 field goals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I watched that game in Germany, by the way, at like 2 in the morning, 2 to 4 in the morning.
True fan.
And then, lost the day I got home from Germany in the AFC North in the AFC Championship.
Yeah, man. But anyways, okay, let us know your guys' predictions down below as well. You guys should be happier with us this week on this episode as opposed to last week, where, by the way, I mean, we were right. I don't want to. And we were also pretty close on the score.
We were right, and we were kind of right with the vibe of the game, too.
Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Be sure to do so. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from. Be sure to do that. Follow us on everything at Around the 412. Check out the links in the description with all of our great sponsors, including the ones we've already talked about. Game Changers. Go to gamechanger.la, pick6.la. Save yourself $10 using code AT412 over there. Shout out to Keats Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app The Cut to book an appointment today, or you can go for a walk-in with Tony or Ashley that are there as well. But shout out to Keith. DC4L Customs. Our shorts are down below. Hit up Haley Wagner on Facebook if you want one of our t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeves with our logo on it. One of our multiple logos, actually. You can get them with a lot of different logos that she's created for us, or we had already had ourselves in the past. And then up on the screen right now, right above Tyler, Marcelo Electric. Give them. I'm literally thinking about, was that just last week where I forgot Beaver County existed when I was reading off the areas?
It was last week's Steelers show. You listed off Butler, Allegheny, and Lawrence counties. You couldn't think of the last one, which is where you live.
Yeah, which is Beaver County, which is where I am located. So if
where we grew up,
of any electrical work, commercial, residential, it doesn't matter. Hit up Boots, Brandon, Marcelo Electric, him and his brother Joe, their business. Again, Beaver County is part of that, along with Lawrence, Allegheny, and Butler. Other than that, for Tyler, for Smitty, this has been the Around the 412 Steelers show. We'll talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.